Or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair. The world's lightest wheelchair is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
If you're trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Good afternoon, Johnson County. I am back here on this wonderful, lovely Tuesday that the Lord has made. I'm here with our guest host today. You might notice that Mick Goins is out of the room. He is in Chicago for 2 weeks. Plane mysteriously went down over the Hudson River after we discussed the last segment about the politicization of the Department of Justice. I'm just joking. He is all right. He's over at the Chicago School of Economics working with professors for a training program. So we're very proud of him on his end. To replace him is the unequivocal, eloquent Matthew Lucci, who is running for TX25, our district for the Federal House of Representatives. He and I will be discussing nothing formal today. We'll be chit-chatting about term limits, the requirements for Congress members to leave once they reach a certain age, or a certain point in life where people no longer remember things except the good old days when communism was at its peak and American policy was to do what we do best and wasteful spend. So, Matthew and I today are going to be discussing term limits. We're going to be discussing campaign finance reform, his opinion on a few things, his platform on a few things. And during the second segment, if we don't get to it in the first one, we would like to touch, and I say touch, we want to barely touch on the Burisma scandal as it's making headlines.
Jake, real quick, I just want to caution you. When we're talking about Biden, we should probably not say the words barely touch. That doesn't seem to go over too well.
we are not going to sniff this. We are going to. There really is no right way to say
Let's
this.
just say that the Burisma scandal does not pass the sniff test.
Apparently not with Biden, but with the Department of Justice, it doesn't seem to have either. They've got their mind set on too many other things, like sending the Navy out 5 hours before the mysterious submarine imploded. Which while that was making headlines, we had articles come out about a secret proviso in the plea bargain about Hunter Biden. But we'll get into all that later. We have much more pressing concerns right now to make sure that people like this do not retain authority in this country past a point where they are no longer focusing on the public good, but on their own self-interest and their dastardly deeds. So,
Yeah.
Greg, we got the message in already. We are not suicidal, so
Yeah, I'm happy with my life, happy with my wife, and if anything happens to me,
I don't know that we should discuss this. I mean, Chuck Grassley's kind of established. The guy can do whatever he wants at this point. But
maybe I should just take this time to practice my radio voice, and I should be able to get up here and practice intros for Jake. We'll do that for the next.
We'll do that for the whole second segment.
For the whole second segment, I am going to be talking in my biggest, strongest radio voice here with Jake Wernette on Joco Radio.
So I think we're going to start off here. Matthew, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you brought this to me today? It was a little bit past last Thursday when you had discussed bringing up term limits and financial reform to congressional campaigns with me on a brief phone call. And I had thought it was interesting. We didn't really have anything planned for this fine Tuesday, but I figured it was something imperative because people are tired of the way things are going. People are very regretful of the decisions of our federal government. And that's not to say that anybody has it out for anybody, but we have a federal government who no longer focuses on the issues that are primarily important to the majority of Americans. And that is both on the left and the right. You have, what we would see publicly as senile individuals. We had an issue not too long ago with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell shutting down Microsoft ESP for 23 seconds in a speech after, a lady touches him on the arm and he looks like he has never felt the touch of a woman before. It was almost like watching Touched by an Angel, but with Mitch McConnell.
Well, I'm not going to go into Mitch McConnell's love life at all. I mean, I do know that he was married to Elaine Chao, the Secretary of Transportation, who is a lot better than Pete Buttigieg. Just shout out to basically anyone who ever played with Thomas the Train as a kid could do better than Pete Buttigieg. And this coming from someone who never played with Thomas the Train as a kid. We had one of the little remote control train things where you set up the tracks and you turn the little knob.
Oh yeah, watch it go around.
Yeah, we would set that up around the Christmas tree, and even that experience would better prepare me to be Secretary of Transportation.
Compared to you, I can say I grew up in the Stone Ages. I remember getting the little wooden tracks, and you had to drive them around there with hand.
We had those. We had those for the other 364 days of the year.
It was like watching the Civil War train industry versus Japan today. Yeah. I wouldn't say we have an equivalent over here. We haven't quite reached the status of getting electric trains yet.
Yeah, but to kind of come back from that tangent, we saw Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell basically freeze up in the middle of his speech and the man is 81 years old.
Yeah.
He's been in his same position as a senator from Kentucky for 30 something years, from the beginning of the 1990s or late 1980s. It's been a long time. And as Republicans, I'm a Republican. For those of you who don't know me, I'm running for U.S. House District 25. As a very conservative product of Johnson County. Grew up right down the road from here. And I've looked at Congress, and I've looked at what Senate has done over the last 30 years, and I haven't seen a whole lot of conservative victories coming out of Congress. And a lot of that is due to we've got the same established power structures in both the Senate and in the House that have been around for decades. And what it takes to break those up is someone who's willing to challenge that power structure, someone who's willing to go after a seat that is held by someone who's very entrenched and is actually going to talk about what the district wants to talk about, what the counties in the district wants to talk about, what the communities in the district wants to talk about. However, when you're going up against power fights back, and they're very entrenched, and they have the connections to all of the money in DC, all of the lobbyists in DC.
The intelligence apparatus.
Exactly. So we've talked many times about the military-industrial complex. Lockheed Martin is not very far from here. I've got a lot of friends who work at Lockheed Martin, but Lockheed Martin has essentially bought themselves, a good quarter of Congress. We've got some hospital coalitions and things like that that'll buy themselves a member of Congress or two. They're not as powerful as the military-industrial complex, but what we see is a handful of individuals with all of the power and all of the money, whether they're the Koch brothers, whether they're George Soros or his grandson now, who's in charge of that, Alex Soros, in charge of that massive pool of money. They've got all the money in the world to influence elections in the United States and influence them in such a way where at the end of the day, they get what they want. And I'm not saying that George Soros rules everything. I'm not saying the Koch brothers rule everything. But if you go through and you look at all the money flowing in, they will buy on the left and they will buy on the right. Because
with great money comes great power. And when you have a finite number of men and women in this country who really all esteem from the upper class, and I say upper class, I'm not talking about some communist scheme that we have this rich and the peasant class, but when you have people who control 90% of the wealth in this country, who control 90% of the industry, and you have the bottom 10%, the bottom 10% that holds like 5% of the wealth in this country, it becomes a very large issue when you have the lower class and the middle class that holds a tenth of the wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to get into talking about Citizens United, one of my favorite scandalous cases from the Supreme Court here in recent history that gives the freedom of speech to corporations, which is where I really think that the Supreme Court has screwed we the people over. Basically, whoever has the most amount of money has the most say in a general election. And with you discussing these magnates, these elites that have all of this authority, this wealth, it becomes very hard for us as the people to get an agenda to pass in Congress, for we as a people to even have a say. And I remember going back to even the Gilded Age in this country, what AP US History would call it. And they had these political cartoons of billionaires. You had the oil trust, the iron trust, the railroad trust, all of these guys dressed up fittingly as money bags,
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the back of Congress and having all these weak, timid looking senators sitting in the front rows that really are dwarfed by these fat guys with a cash symbol on their gut. And we have to remember that this is the same power structure that has been here since into the 1870s. So they have a lot of pull in this country.
Yeah, and they continue to have a lot of pull in this country. The millionaires and the billionaires who have the right connections can essentially make law. And the way they do it is they buy off some politicians. And the longer that politician is away from their district, the longer that they're sitting in their office in Washington, D.C.,
you're seeing a box of cash more than you're seeing the people that you're serving.
Exactly, because every minute you're in D.C., you're making money from campaign donations. People are, in this district, buying more cars from your car dealership. They're swinging PPP loans your way, putting you in the front of the line so that you get access to $1.4 million before most small business owners here on Wilshire in Burleson have the ability to take advantage of that program. That is just one of the many ways that members of Congress who stay there for a very long time, whether it's 10 years, 12 years, 14 years, we've got members of Congress who've been in over 30 years. Mitch McConnell's been in since the late 80s, early 90s. And no one in Kentucky and really no one in this district can call up their congressman and say, hey, there's this one thing that I really, really care about. I mean, there's something I talked about on air, the Epstein client list a couple weeks ago. And don't worry, again, I'm happy with my life. But
we live in very scary times. It's almost as if Orwell could not even begin to fathom the reality of the way that our republic is shaped out. And for anybody who has not seen the video, there was a MSNBC a host that was discussing Carl Sagan's last published book 10 months before he died. Those were his last published words. And I bought the book for free. I saved up enough money from buying $100 in
how do you
books
buy
in the
something
last
for
week.
free?
I feel like I am living on stimulus checks when I get something for free because I spend $200. But Carl Sagan was really worried about, the future of the United States. And given that he had an immense gift to educate people, an immense gift given to him by God, who he all of his life did not acknowledge. And I hope that he was saved by Christ, because such a gift, you would want people that want to ask you questions to be able to meet you when you're dead. But Carl Sagan really said that we are at the point where we're moving, and he said it's going to be in his grandchildren's time, which is our day and age, is we're going to move from an industrialized economy to a service and information economy. And the American people will never be able to put their agenda through the government anymore. He said we're going to live in a time where agendas are not proposed by the people. The voice of the people is not going to be heard. And I paraphrase that. But when we really start to see what Matthew is talking about here with members of Congress being bought, and that's evident, that's not a conspiracy, and that's not me sitting here saying that life could be better, so to speak. But we have people who have been entrenched in the U.S. government for hundreds of years. There's things that people won't even be able to trace back to our founding fathers anymore. The lineage is gone. The gap is widened. The sea has been broadened. And, we talk about the days of Moses spreading the Red Sea to get the Israelites across. I feel like it's going to take an act of God to spread the sea for us to even have a voice in the federal government anymore.
Yeah. And I would agree with that to some extent. It will take a miracle from God and God's blessing to be able to tear the veil behind who's behind all the dark money. It's going to take God's blessing over each and every congressional race, each and every Senate race, each and every state house race, each and every city council race, to get the people in those positions that will do as God calls them to do, will do what is right for the community. But what we've seen right now is, if we look at any poll for how people perceive Congress, their job approval rating, I think the last one that I saw was 17%, and that was actually trending up. Most people do not like Congress as a whole.
Yeah.
However,
it was like the Supreme Court that was holding the majority of the approval, and even until Trump, I don't think that has gone up as much as it was. I think it's down like 5 or 6% even since then.
Now it's in the 40s in terms of how much people trust the U.S. Supreme Court, which is terrible. A supposedly non-political entity getting so much hate from the left and the right for what they do.
And it's very ironic. We talk about all of these federalized programs. We talk about the Department of Education. Anybody that has gone to a public school, a private school, a charter school, it doesn't matter as long as you're paying for it, or inherently your taxes are paying for it. anybody knows that to pass a test, you have to have a 70 or above. To have a B, you have to have an 80. To have an A, you have to have a minimum of a 90. So what I've never understood is the irony, the paradoxical statement behind the U.S. is doing extremely well when every survey has pointed to 27% of Americans are optimistic about the future, when 40% of Americans approve the Supreme Court. I have never once taken a class in my entire life where a 27 or a 40% means that I have the necessary grade to pass a test, let alone an election or a public optimism in my own government.
Yeah, well, the sad thing is, we as Americans, we seem to grade on a curve, where we look at 17% approval rating for Congress, and yet 90+% of those in the class, 90% of those in Congress get reelected, 90% of those pass, and less than 10% fail or lose reelection. And a lot of that is because they just have more money and more power to get their message out and convince people, oh, we've done a good enough job. I'm fighting for this. I'm fighting for that. When they go to one of the clubs here, whether it's in Tarrant County, the Arlington Republican Club that I'm part of, or they go down to the Johnson County Republican Volunteers. I'm also part of that group. And they tell us one thing, and then immediately go to Washington the next week and vote against the thing that they said that they were fighting for. Fighting for pre-existing conditions, great. Why are you voting against the Patients with Pre-Existing Conditions Act 3 days after you just came and told us that you were fighting for those with pre-existing conditions?
And then they'll come out and use the party line to say, I was against increased government spending the whole time. But let's spend $100 billion in a country most people can't find on a map. Let's spend $10.5 trillion and up the national debt a further $10 trillion for some stimulus checks. They're not even going to go back to the economy. They're going to go in somebody's bank account. And the majority of them were probably not given to the American people. The majority of them were probably given to banks, to businesses to bail them out. You have a big bail run disguised as stimulus checks. And I'm not saying that this is where it went. This is just me popping around some theories here. Is we have a government that is in decline with the responsibilities of the American public. But before we go any further, I would like for you to discuss why term limits are important to you.
Yes. So we've talked a little bit so far on this show about why having members of Congress in office for so long is a bad thing. They lose sight of what's happening in their own district. They start serving the interests of donors from outside the district, including here in our own congressional district, the 25th congressional district, where less than 1% of our congressmen's campaign donations come from small dollar donations in this district.
Wow.
The vast majority, and I'd be happy to share this with anyone, shoot us an email, lucci4texas@gmail.com, or check out our website. Shoot us an email, and then we'd be happy to send you all of this data. But because of that, if we have someone who's been in office for 14 years, who's been in there for 7 terms, or if we've got someone in office for longer, what happens is they're not serving our interests.
Oh, yeah.
When the whole point of Congress is to serve the interests of the American people, especially the U.S. House. It's supposed to represent the needs of each individual district.
And that really, you talk about the House and the Senate. And the reason that people say that we are a Republican nation, and I don't mean Republican as in the party, but we are a constitutional republic. We are not a democracy. Democracy is essentially everybody has a voice, even those that are not residents of your nation. When we talk about a republic, it's only the landowning, natural-born citizens or those that are naturalized within the country have the ability to have a say in their government. And that really takes back to the Roman Republic, where the plebeian council essentially would have been the House of Representatives. You have a certain amount of reps for each state, depending on the population. And then you have the Senate, which comes directly from the Roman Republic to the American.
Jake, I think that's where we disagree as to how the government should be. I'm much more in favor of anyone who is a legal U.S. citizen should have the right to vote over how they're governed.
Oh, yeah.
To quote, not Barbie from this last movie, but from the Toy Story movie, authority should come from the consent of the governed, not from the threat of force.
Amen.
And you cannot consent to be governed if you are not able to vote. Um, Therefore, everyone should have a say in who at least their direct representative is. And I encourage everyone to go out and vote, both in the primaries, which are March 5th of next year, and in the general election. Um, to that end, we've talked about a lot of problems when we have members of Congress who are in there forever. And so, what I'm doing today here on Joco Community Radio, on the Let Freedom Ring show with Jake Wernette, is I am signing the U.S. Term Limits Pledge. And the reason that I want to sign it here is I want to make a commitment to be a part of the solution that we've been talking about. And I want to do it here in Burleson, where I grew up playing baseball. I mean, I grew up right down the road in a town called Venus, played baseball here in Burleson. And it's very important to me that I stay connected with this district. I stay connected with the community that I grew up in. And for that reason,
And if you do want to set it here, that
Yeah,
way the people can watch you sign this. It's very monumental.
and to my knowledge, it's the only time someone's ever signed this on a podcast.
We don't have the money that Fox News does, nor the backdoor discussions.
And I will say, I am the youngest federal candidate in history.
So
to sign this.
you are watching your candidate for House of Representatives sign to limit the amount that he can stay in there. I think that is a testament to not only the gumption of a person who wants to change things, but somebody who believes in what they're preaching. And a lot of these House people will get up there and debate. They'll say, we are all for term limits, we are all for regulating the federal government, but then they turn right around and say that I'm not willing to sign this because they're too delved into their self-interest. So this one might be a little bit closer.
Yeah, I'll turn around, just show everyone at home. I'm committing. I, Matthew Lucci, pledge that as a member of Congress, I will co-sponsor and vote for the U.S. Term Limits Amendment of 3 House terms and 2 Senate terms and no longer limit. And I'm also pledging, even though the U.S. Term Limits Organization doesn't ask for this, I am pledging to self-limit to that point. I'm not going to say rules for thee, but not for me. Rules for all of us. You should not have a separate set of rules, whether you're in Congress or whether you vote for Congress or whether you choose to exercise your right not to vote.
And I do want to reiterate that it's important that we understand where the concept of blind justice should be. Blind justice should be innocent until proven guilty. Justice should not focus on incriminating a person that is innocent or somebody that has not been investigated or prosecuted. Blind justice should only lie in innocent until proven guilty. We cannot lie blind to people that are committing crimes, that are allowing the federal government to run away with our money, with our taxes, with the trust of the American people, and decline the degrade of the lifestyle in this country. We cannot have people disobeying the rules while our people are held accountable for those same rules.
Absolutely. And I just want to make sure that everybody sees this. Everyone knows that I signed this and that I'm held accountable to it, because there's a lot of members of Congress who've signed this pledge and have gone back on it. I would ask that everybody go check out termlimits.com, and you can figure out, you can see on there who has signed this pledge, which members of Congress have, which ones have opposed this pledge, have opposed the move to add term limits to the Congress. And then if you want, you can go check out fec.gov and see how much money they're raking in campaign donations from outside of their districts. Now,
and that's what I had noticed with AOC's campaign, for instance. And I'm not picking sides here. There are plenty of Republicans who have taken money as well. You know, AOC had gotten millions from Apple, from Amazon, from Disney, from Google, from all of these big corporations. But how do these corporations that are not only in every U.S. state and in every house in America and everywhere else abroad able to determine the means of governance, the ideologies, the beliefs of all of the American people? They don't have a voice for us. They don't speak for us. That's the job of our representatives. And if that right is taken away from the American people to elect them, then we have to kind of consider who we are putting back into office at this point.
Exactly. And with these multi-state corporations or multinational corporations basically buying themselves a member of Congress, what they're trying to do is they're trying to find those in Congress with the most influence, to be able to bring more members of Congress onto a bill that they support to make things better for that corporation, many times at the expense of the American people.
So we have about 30 seconds left. So join us in the second segment. We'll be discussing. I'm not sure that today is the right day to discuss scandalous activity, but let's discuss.
There's never a bad day to discuss scandalous activity.
Let's
you're a radio
discuss-
host. That's what you do.
Let's discuss federal finance reform, and let's look at the finances of our elected officials. So join us the second segment. We'll be right back with co-host Matthew Lucci, TX25 House District candidate.
Attention all business owners and creative minds. Do you need a unique and personalized touch for your products? Look no further than Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs. I'm Ron Phillips, co-owner of Romika Designs. We offer custom laser engraving services for a variety of products, including promotional items and corporate or personal gifts. With state-of-the-art equipment and a team of skilled designers, we can engrave intricate designs on virtually any material. Whether it's a special message, a company logo, or a custom design, Romika Laser Engraving will help you make your mark. And the best part, our prices are affordable and our turnaround time is quick.
I couldn't be happier with the work Romika Laser Engraving did for me. The engraving on my product was precise and exactly what I wanted.
So don't wait any longer to add a personal touch to your products. Call Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs today at 817-400-4040 or visit our website at romikadesigns.com. We look forward to helping you make your mark.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Welcome back to the second half of Let Freedom Ring. I'm your host, Jake Wernette, here with guest host today, Matthew Lucci, who is the representative candidate for the House in Texas District 25, opposing Roger Williams. First, we'd like to let you know that Joco Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoco.com is the best place to find all the ways to listen and watch, and the station app is also available for free on both Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store and check out our lineup and more at JocoCommunityRadio.com. This episode and many more are brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your local Texas sales rep at 844-839-4245. That's 844-839-4245. Be sure to dress your arms in more at thetiffy.com. And we are back with our second segment. I do want to say that we are still looking for sponsors for the show. If you know anybody that owns a local business, would like to get their name out there, they have very decently priced packages. And anything that you donate, all of it goes to support the show, to get us workspace, to get us creative outlets here at the station. So if you know anybody, if you are that person, you could be that one for us. You know, everybody talks about marriage. You could be the one for us. But we're back with Matthew Lucci. The second segment, we're going to be discussing campaign finances. We really want to touch briefly on the that's another brilliant way to say it, on the current activities of our elected officials. I'll put it that way. We're not here to accuse anybody. We're not here to ridicule anybody. We're simply here to educate the public, show
Gotta
them
speak for yourself, Jake.
show them what is out there, and we want to educate them to make their own informed decision, because as many of our founding fathers had quoted, a knowledgeable public is the best defense against tyranny. So Matthew, let's dive into campaign finance reform. If you're down to discuss any part of that, anything specific, we're here to allow you a place to discuss. We're not going to censor.
And I appreciate that, Jake Wernette, host of the Let Freedom Ring show here on Joko Radio.
We're getting pretty good at that.
Yeah, we are. You could cut that if you want, and use it as your intro.
We'll put it on the Instagram page.
Yeah, you definitely should. But yeah, one of the biggest things that I want to make sure that everyone at home understands is if you go online, if you go to fec.gov, you can look at every single donation that someone has ever made to a political candidate. Now, that would scare a lot of members of Congress if you go in and you could find any donation ever to them. And that's one of the reasons why they've made it a little harder to find certain donations versus others. So, for example, if someone wants to go donate to my campaign, we just have a regular campaign committee that someone can go online to, go onto the website, click the little donate button, and it goes to the campaign committee. Anyone who's donated to us, that's available on the FEC website by law. We don't have, and intentionally so, what is known as a leadership PAC.
Mm-hmm.
So a leadership PAC is kind of this loophole in campaign finance law where if you want to get around the maximum allowable donation to a candidate, that candidate could set up what is known as the leadership PAC or leadership political action committee, which is only tied to one candidate. And they can raise, again, up to that legal maximum from individuals, and then pretty much an unlimited amount of money from corporations can also go to that leadership PAC. That campaign can also connect with other political action committees that they're authorizing to transfer money directly into their account. So right now, the legal maximum amount of money that Jake here could donate would be $3,300 to anyone's political campaign.
That's under my legal name alone, right?
Okay, so legally, you're not supposed to donate beyond that. If you're a couple, you can donate twice that for the primary, or twice that for the general, or both. Like you could donate $6,600 total to a campaign, $3,300 to a primary campaign, $3,300 to a general campaign, right? But what a lot of folks do, and I've seen people get caught for this years after the fact, is, Jake, if you've got a dog, you could fill out all the paperwork and donate and put your dog's name on there. And it's going to come up on the political report, on the FEC reports as, okay, Skippy Wernette. Okay, maybe that's a real name.
I've got a few friends in a graveyard here across town that would love to help.
And there's a lot of people who will put, a lot of campaigns will put someone like Jake, if you donated $1 one time, well, and they need to basically launder an additional $3,300, they might say, 4 months after you donated, that you donated $3,300. But that money actually came from someone else, and they're just looking for a name on their sheet to say donated to you.
Yeah.
That happens an awful lot. So not all the FEC.gov data is correct. A lot of that comes from the way the campaigns report.
Which is not always open and honest as it is meant to be, which is the problem when you have especially those wealthy people who have the money to get around, the money to find those loopholes and invest more than the average American ever could. And especially placing it under the name of probably Americans that might have used a data server or something for these technocratic companies. And now they have the names, the addresses on all of these things that they can just put right into an FEC document. And you get a letter in the mail that says, thank you for donating to.
Well, they don't even send that. And the reason that they don't is because they don't want Jake Wernette to know that they're using Jake Wernette's name on the FEC database in their campaign finance report.
It's kind of like that political membership I got ripped off on here a few months back. I tried to become a member of this this foundational organization, and They said, "Thank you for your $50 donation." I said, "I only wanted to donate $3 a month." So now they're putting me on this $50 a month plan, and I call the bank, I dispute it, and they say, "Well, it says here you wanted to." I said, "Well, how do you know what I wanted to do? You don't even know where I live. You don't know what I'm thinking, at least yet." I'm waiting for that point where they're hypnotizing everybody, telling them, "Hey, you want to donate $50 to this guy."
Yeah.
But
I mean, so that is just the campaign committee themselves. What a lot of members of Congress do, and what a lot of candidates do, and we're not doing it, is setting up a leadership pack. And that leadership pack can basically take unlimited amounts of money, again, from the same person who is limited to 3,300 for the primary, to the committee itself. They can donate an additional 3,300 to this, or they can donate basically unlimited money to a super PAC, for example, that is connected to the campaign. And so there's a bunch of different pots of money that they can donate to. And the candidate knows, okay, all this money is just flowing in. The leadership PAC is essentially a slush fund. And then super PACs, it's a slush fund for a group of members of Congress. So think the Congressional Leadership Fund on the Republican side, which is just available under Kevin McCarthy's discretion to hand out to candidates who are facing,
and he can
primary
decide
challenges.
who he gives it to, who he favors for that. And that brings in a whole nother can of ethics. Is should these, and I'm going to ask you this publicly here, should these people that have been entrenched for Congress for years, knowing that they might not give that part of that leadership fund to you, for instance, for if you get elected and you need it money for your second term, and per se the leadership of the House or the Senate or whatever sees candidates like you and says, "Well, I don't think this guy is going to foot the bill for us." Do you think it's ethical for them to solely have sole discretion over who they give it to?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Jake, and I'll tell the entire JoCo community that I will not take any money from the Congressional Leadership Fund. I'm not going to take any money from whoever the leadership is at the time in Washington, D.C. They shouldn't be able to dictate who represents Johnson County. Johnson County should be able to dictate who represents Johnson County
Amen.
and who is going to be fighting for them in Washington, D.C., not the other way around. And to that end, I don't think that massive slush funds of money should be allowed, and shouldn't be allowed to be controlled by party leadership. This is on the left. This is on the right. And that makes me a little bit different. I'm not just going to call out Democrats. I'm going to call out Republicans as well.
Well, that's part of the whole values thing, is we can't have a sort of morality for one side and then have a bias towards another. It's, if you elect a Republican judge, you expect them to treat Democrats and Republicans the same when they walk into a courtroom. The same as supposedly, unlike a few people in New York who would dictate that a Republican who walks into a court is apparently needing more prosecuted evidence against them. And so, you get a continuance and you're like, well, we just got to find a way to rip this guy a new one. It really goes against the American sense of justice, and we have to hold both of our sides of the aisle accountable. And this goes for anybody: Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Green Party, New Deal Party, if you want to create that, even the Communist Party, which still under law, I believe, is illegal to be a member of, but we'll get into that another day. But I do like your sense of morality for both sides. Is that something refreshing that we have not seen in a candidate, even a Republican candidate, in many years? Is we have people that nominate their favorites to their cabinets. We have people that nominate favorites to their staff, people that have all of these ways to get around the laws. And you really have nobody that is calling it out on either side. And that's something that I know discuss the majority of the American public. And that is probably a reason why we have a 27% approval rating.
27 is pretty high. I mean, I saw 17%, just the other day. So maybe you're looking at different polls than I am, but 27%.
They're polling the 81 million Biden voters.
Yeah,
they have faith in this country.
And I'll laugh about that. But at the end of the day, whether it's Hunter Biden, and I know, we're going to get into Hunter Biden and Burisma and all that, whether it's Hunter Biden and
At
Burisma
some point.
at some point, so long as I'm here on the air, they cannot take me out. I want to live. But whether it's Hunter Biden, or whether it is a Republican on the other side, whether it's the plea deal that Hunter Biden was offered just the other day, or whether it is Donald Trump going to court both individuals, with all individuals, really, no matter your political ideology, should be granted innocent until proven guilty, and should have the right
Their
to a
constitutional
fair
amenities.
trial. Yeah, well, I wouldn't say they're constitutional amenities. I would say they're constitutional rights.
Yes.
And all of us deserve those constitutional rights. Now, the problem that we see is if one side weaponizes the justice system, then we have a problem. I think it is a big problem. Again, to a lot of Republicans and those of you who disagree, feel free to type in the comments. It increases engagement. Or, send me some hate mail. I'll make sure that that my that our mailbox is listed at the bottom of the LucciForTexas.com website. We read all of that. So if you have any hate mail, send it my way for what I'm about to say. That Republicans should not be weaponizing the justice system either.
Oh, yeah.
And some people will disagree with me on that. But I happen to agree with what Rand Paul said the other day, is that when you have a system where Democrats are trying to use the legal system against Republicans and Republicans are trying to use the legal system against Democrats, then you have injustice for all. You do not have a justice system anymore. And we've seen, the weaponization of the justice system on one side, in particular over the last several years, I would argue. But we cannot fight fire with fire. We have to fight fire with water, because at the end of the day, if we allow that to happen, then what we've been warned against is going to come true. Where if they can go after each other, they can come after us. They can come after each and every one of us in our communities. They could tack extra taxes on us and not tell us, and then charge us with tax evasion. They could go after us for our political ideology at any point. And
essentially what we could see here in the future is, and I'm not going to say right now, but in the future, when we see, like you said, the government making new laws and not telling the American public, because there's no way that we can read 7,000 pages of a spending stimulus bill. But you could have American citizens who desire to run for office to make things better, people who want to correct the wrongs of the past in this country, get into the federal government and they say, well, you're ineligible because you have not been prosecuted for this felony level offense against the federal government or your state. Even, I don't know, you ran over a stop sign, defacing public property, so to speak. And you have all of these outstanding things that they might not can prosecute you, but certainly can blackmail you on certain things.
yeah, they can go after anyone for anything if we weaponize the justice system each way. And then there's a legal precedent for that. And that is very dangerous, because then they can operate based on precedent, not based on law. And so that's why I think it's important that we take a real look at Burisma and a real look at what Joe Biden and his family have done, and then ask ourselves, are we being ideologically blinded when we're looking at this? Or are we looking at facts, trying to find the facts? And, I'll say I dislike Joe Biden as much as the next Republican. But I'm not going to come up here and say that every single thing he's ever done is terrible, wrong, and illegal or whatever without being presented the facts. I'm not going to just parrot whatever Joe McCarthy or Mitch McConnell, when Mitch McConnell finally comes to, is going to be able to tell me. I'm not going to just say what they want me to say. I'm going to look at the facts. I am going to evaluate it, and I'm going to be honest about it, both in Washington and here in our community. And I think that if a lot more members of Congress weren't so beholden to the massive amounts of money that come out of Washington and go into their campaign accounts, and if a lot more members of Congress had taken a pledge to say, I'm going to be here maximum 3 terms in the House. So the worst that you can do to me is send me home on election early instead of, 40 years before I wanted to leave. Like, you shouldn't be a career politician.
Yeah.
It is time to end the era of career politicians. If we had a lot more people like that, this country would be a lot better place.
And we had set the precedent for FDR. Now let's do it for our members of Congress. Even Harry Truman, when he got in, thought it was a bit awkward that FDR had served almost 4 terms in office. And we have most people in Congress that have been
Well,
here for 60 or 70 years.
And to be fair, FDR was in office for really 3 terms.
Yeah.
Got elected to a 4th, and God said no.
Yeah. So if we have the decency of nature saying it's not legitimate for us to have people in this long, and I do want to highlight one person. I do have kind of a bias, but I try to be equal on both sides. Just like Mitch McConnell on the Republican side, who's been in there 40 years or so, right?
Mhm.
And we have Nancy Pelosi, who had been in there for almost 50 years, 5 decades. We have a lady who has pictures out online of her with President John F. Kennedy and President Ronald Reagan when she was first Speaker of the House. And we have people in there that are still waging the sword of Cold War policy on a modern society where nuclear weapons today are twice as fast deployable as they were 50 years ago. And we have twice as many of them that exist in larger megatonnage. And we have twice the amount of missiles, I'm sure, in both tactical and strategic armaments. And we have 50 times the amount of taxes, the amount of income, the amount of printed dollars that we have. And we have people who are waging them as if it were 50 years ago. Is not the same as an evolving society where we have young people saying, I don't really want to be a part of this government. I don't really want to get into it. I don't really care. And I think that's where, and you might disagree, you might agree, and you might have a different implication of it, but we have young people who are saying, I don't really feel like I should get involved because my voice doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter. If you can rig an election or you can have this much money or God knows what, and you have millions upon millions of young people that have the chance to change this country for the better, sitting at home, getting indoctrinated on the phone, on social media, on what the news is telling them is right and wrong. And Lord knows the standard of the American family is in decline. There really is no hope for this country unless we get the youth involved finally. We have to end the amount of time that somebody can spend in there and give new blood a chance to come in and govern this country.
Yeah, we've got senators like, I call her Dying Feinstein. Her real name is Dianne Feinstein. So Dying Feinstein is a senator from California, has not announced whether she's going to be running again or not. But there's already a whole bunch of people running against her because she's at the point in her life where her aides are having to tell her to vote, tell her how to vote, and remind her that she took a 2-month leave of absence that she totally forgot about when she was pushed back in her wheelchair. So we're at a point where these people who are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s are the ones running this country, and they've been in office for decades now. Now, something that I heard all my life is you can't keep trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
That is the definition of insanity. We also cannot expect that those who got this country into the mess that we are in right now
to get us out of it
are going to be the ones to get us out of it, because they've shown us that they are every bit as deserving of their 17% or 11% approval rating. They're every bit as deserving of that. And they're not people who are real small business owners who founded something themselves rather than having something handed to them
who
by
have
their
to
parents.
deal with the red tape, the constant regulations, the taxes, and the hardship of the federal government placing on them.
Exactly. It's not run by people who've experienced homelessness. When we're talking about homelessness policy, where it's not led by people who have gone down to the southern border and are affected by open border policies every single day. Those aren't the people who are dictating immigration policy. It's not led by people who are in the military or come from a military background. Those aren't the people governing our veterans policy. You just have a whole bunch of lifelong career politicians who maybe they were a fundraiser for someone else before, maybe they worked in the office of someone else before, and they were just kind of shoot in because those with the money knew that they could buy them off too. And once they're in, just keep paying them money, keeping them there because it is more worth their investment to keep that person in their seat until they lose brain function and then a couple years more. To quote Remy, one of my favorite artists, if you will, from Reason TV. Go check them out. They pick on Texas a lot, actually. But yeah, it's one of those things where we need younger folks to actually get involved. And when we look at Johnson County, we see that the amount of folks who come out and vote under the age of 40 is about 7%. And then if we talk about the Republican primary, we're down in like 3 to 4% range. It is abysmally small. And of course, it's going to happen if you don't have people who have lived here running for office. You don't have people who are at least somewhere near their age bracket trying to get them out.
I do want to reiterate what I had constantly said as a city council candidate. I was the youngest person in Burleson's history to run this far. I want to reiterate to both the older and the younger viewers of this, your age, your background does not dictate how well you can work with somebody. It does dictate how you're going to interact with them. It does not dictate whether you interact with them or not. So when you have young people that are aspiring to run for office, don't tell them it's all about experience, son. You can't run for office if you have never been in the federal government. Well, how did all of these other, the people that have been in there 40 years, I guarantee you Nancy Pelosi didn't have experience as Speaker of the House when she was elected to Congress. I guarantee you that Donald Trump did not have any political experience when he ran for president. And look what some of these people are capable of. And I'm not saying all of it's good. I'm not saying all of it's bad. But you have people that impact policy of the most powerful economy, the most powerful military, the most powerful population on the face of the earth. And we have not given a chance, not even the slide of an eye, to a new generation to come in and take authority to do it the legitimate way. And so when we push these young people into, I don't belong in this country, I don't care to belong in this country, I don't care what happens to it, now you are arising in a new problem. Not only that young people are not involved, but young people hate this country. Young people don't want to have anything to do with it because they are used to being put to the side. They're used to being kicked around. And you wonder why so many young people are falling for the lies of communism, why young people are falling on the other side of the aisle to the lies of fascism, that they have to be a degraded mind. They have to be a unitary society. Everybody has to be the exact same or else nobody fits in. And that is what we're looking at, not only with these things that they're putting in public schools, but when you don't give young people the chance to show the past generations what they're capable of, to lead a legacy that is worth leading, and to integrate themselves with a American history, a beautiful history where they can belong no matter what they want to be when they grow up. And we are sticking them in this category of feeding them the lies of sexual education. We're feeding them a degraded family. We're feeding them crime. We're festering it with drugs. We're festering it with addiction, and we're growing it by taking fathers out of the home. I don't think, if we don't give young people a chance to prove that they're capable of something, and that's why I really respect Matthew for running for Congress, is because we finally have a new generation of people. It's not going to be a fast change. It's not going to be overnight, night and day difference. It's going to take years for us to retrain the minds of the youth in this country, to get them involved, to want them to get involved. So if you have a child at home, engage them in politics. Don't be afraid to sit down and have a civil discussion. Even simple clues. What do you think about what's going on? Read them one headline. What do you think about what's going on right now? What do you think about engaging in school? What do you think about what they're teaching you? What are they teaching you? And
or invite me to come on by.
Yeah.
We've been knocking on doors. I'm happy to meet with y'all. I'm happy to talk to your kids about the future of this country.
So we really want to thank everybody for sticking with us. God bless you. Stay cool. Join us next Tuesday. This Thursday, we'll be discussing probably the UFO phenomenon. Next week, we'll have Henry Tyke on to discuss the crisis in Rhodesia and the plan that it has for the United States. God bless.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.